I was in the Democratic Alliance, my party had made a position about blue lights. I don't mind if he chooses to use blue lights. I don't care. If
you just care about the hypocrisy. That's what you care about.
I care about the hypocrisy. Don't say you're not going to use blue lights, but then have them in your car for a case of emergency. Don't do that. It's hypocrisy. So the point I want to make here, Chris, is that the scrutiny that you come under in government is very different to the scrutiny you give when you are in opposition. And now that the DA is no longer in opposition, and they were in opposition for a long time, very good opposition, there's now a bit of a vacuum in opposition because the MK fills that vacancy, and they're not very good in opposition. So the DA are now in government, and the DA are starting to say, well, we use these perks because they're in the ministerial handbook. And we are part of this cabinet as big as it is, when last, 6, 7, 8 months ago, they were saying the cabinet was too big. Now, the first thing I would have expected was for them to say, we'll come into the GNU on condition that you reduce the size of the cabinet. If that's been your drum that you've been beating for years, and I know it is, and if you just do a little bit of research, you will see that John Steenhuisen, as the leader of the opposition, not long ago was asking the self-same question that I put to him. He was having put to ministers when he was the leader of the opposition. So what's good for the goose must be sauce for the gander.
I watched John Steenhuisen lead that charge for the DA about holding the government to account. Listen, I'm a member of a veterans organization. I'm the commander of a local Veterans of Foreign Wars post. It's a local group for veterans from all of our foreign wars, people, the few World War II survivors we still have, all the way through all our conflicts who served in our U.S. military. And as commander at the post, we have a canteen, which has a bar, and we have small games of chance gambling where people can gamble. It's legal. So I don't drink alcohol there. I don't gamble there. I don't participate in any activities like that. And people ask me why. And I said, well, it may be unfair, but as a leader, I hold myself to a higher standard because I need to be above scrutiny. I need to be above reproach. And I think that's where you're going with this. People may be considered unfair, but if you deign to serve the public, you need to hold yourself to a higher standard, and you need to be willing to be held accountable for things. And I think that's fair. Maybe that's what we're talking about here, is being held accountable for what you're talking about. And if Helen Zillow's position as the federal chairperson is that the DA ministers aren't using blue lights, then John Steenhuisen shouldn't have any wiggle room to say only in an emergency.
No, look, I think you're 100% right. And I've been to a couple of those RSO kind of institutions in Australia, return servicemen organizations. I think they're great. They give you an opportunity to mix with people that have sacrificed for their countries. And I believe as an officer, you should be exemplary and you should be beyond reproach. And especially if you've transitioned from being the official opposition to going into government, you need to understand that you're going to be held to the standard that you expected from the government when you were in opposition. And there's going to be no reprieve. So I don't think they should be too precious about this. And we're going to continue asking awkward questions. And John Steenhuisen must understand that it's not about him. It's about every single minister must account in this government of national unity. While we are going through austerity in the line function departments, we would like to see the cabinet starting to being austere and cut down on expenses. Now, John Steenhuisen made a big thing about the fact that he inherited these vehicles and they were 7 years old and blah, blah, blah. What's going to happen, Chris, is that in 6 months or a year's time, those vehicles would have gone beyond the allowed limit of mileage. And the department is going to have to sell those vehicles. And the department is going to buy replacement vehicles. And those replacement costs are going to be enormous. And they're going to come out of the department that he is now the minister of. So he can make a big fanfare about the fact that he inherited these vehicles and that he didn't buy them. That's fine. But in 6 months or a year's time, his department is going to have to replace those vehicles, and it's going to have to come out of his department's budget. And he's going to be faced with the same question this time next year. And then he's going to have to answer. And he mustn't be disingenuous and say that we didn't provide the evidence. What we did was we asked him the question. His department submitted a response. We put out a statement, and attached to that statement was his question and his response. So everybody has all the facts at their disposal. We're not trying to play gotcha politics here. And as we go through the questions, as they come in, we will make more statements about ministers that are living large on the public purse. And this is what we want to see. We want to see ministers tightening their belts. And good luck to John Steenhuisen. Well done on him saying, I won't buy a new vehicle now. I'll use an old vehicle. Give it to me out of the carpool. But when a time comes when that vehicle is no longer allowed to be used because of the same handbook that he refers to, his department's going to have to buy him a vehicle.